chaos from the beginning to the end. And then we have a country like Turkey, which is one country, just Turkey, okay, which is has industrialized itself within the last 15 to 20 years in such a way that no other country in the Middle East has done. Okay, it has militarily is actually now number one. You know, the Iraqi army is destroyed. The Egyptian army is actually not that strong anymore. So we have actually, there's just militarily, if you look at that, there's actually just Pakistan and Turkey. Okay.
I would like to start with mentioning that the Arabs were absolutely right to revolt against the Turks because, and their tyranny, because the Turks were not caliphs, they were not Amir al-Mu'mineen, they were not the leaders of the believers, the Mamluks were, and they violently usurped that title from the Mamluks. And so it's justification enough for them to revolt against the Turks. What do you say on that exactly?
Okay, there we go again. I told you last time already that I think you need to really do something about your misconceptions and about your misunderstandings with regards to Islamic history and Islam itself. So you're starting, a lot of things that you said there were actually quite wrong. Okay, now you mentioned the Arabs revolting against the Turks. Who, which Turks? What Turks are we talking about? Are you talking about the Ottomans? The Ottomans were not Turks. The Turks, they became Turks in 1923-24 when the Republic of Turkey was declared the Republic of Turkey. Before that was the Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman Empire had Ottoman citizens, and the Ottoman sultans would never consider themselves being Turks. Okay, they did have Turkic roots, which goes back to Central Asia, and they acknowledge them, but they would never call themselves Turks, never. Okay, so now what you're doing is presentism. You're actually just taking what we know now, okay, in the present. We know that the country of Turkey, with its inhabitants being the Turks, we know that they had ancestors, okay, let's call it that way, and the ancestors were the Ottomans, right? So you're just taking the idea that we have nowadays of the Turks over, and imposing it basically on the idea of the Ottomans. Now that's not true. So the Ottomans and the Ottoman Empire was an empire run by Ottoman sultans. The Ottoman sultans were married, most of them had different wives, and many wives were actually not even Turkic. Okay, many, if not even the majority, were not even Turkic. So that means the mothers of the sultans, well, most of them were not Turkic. There were Bosnians in between, there were Greeks in between, the Albanians in between, there were Caucasians in between, Russians, and so on and so on. So we had a multicultural, multi-religious, and multi-ethnic leadership, actually. Some of the women were not even Muslim. Okay, so now the sultans, the men, yes, they were of Turkic background and they were Muslim. That's correct. But again, some of them were not even capable of ruling, and we admit this. I mean, with 36 rulers, you cannot tell me that all 36 rulers were the same. I have 7 children, alhamdulillah. Same mother, same father. And still these 7 children are very different, although they are from the same mother and same father. What about 36 different sultans? This video is sponsored by the 𝗘𝗦𝗟𝗡 program. For nearly 7 centuries, Ibn Khaldoun's 𝗘𝗦𝗟𝗡 has been read and studied by scholars and students of history, sociology, politics, and economics as the single most authoritative and astounding work of classical scholarship in the field of history. Embark on an enlightening educational venture led by Muslim scholars and teachers delving into Islamic history, sociology, economics, and beyond. Engage with cutting-edge learning cues and multimedia components, allowing for a deeper understanding of the topics. Distinguish between the lies and the truths of the narratives told, between reliable and unreliable sources. Equip yourself with the skills to conduct deep research and build confidence to combat Islamophobia. Come and strengthen your Muslim identity today. Grab the course in the video description. Some of them were not even directly related, obviously, right? So obviously these were different people, different ideologies, different ideas, different upbringing, different knowledge. Sultan Suleiman cannot be compared to Sultan Selim, for example, the second. Okay, Osman or Orhan cannot be compared to Abdul Hamid. You know, and so on and so on. That's how it goes on. So we should learn, you should learn to differentiate. Okay, so Turks and Ottomans, 2 different types of approaches we need there. Of course, the ancestors of the Turks were the Ottomans. Yes, I'm not denying it. I'm not taking this away. Without a doubt. Like the ancestors of the Greeks were actually the Byzantines, right? And before them, the ancient Greeks. Yes. But in a totally different setting. Totally different story that goes around them. Okay? So, with regards to the Arabs now revolting against the Ottomans, first of all, specific Arabs revolted, not all of them. So specific of these people listened to the was actually of Shaitan, who was incorporated into the British and the French, okay, who came and actually allowed them and told them that, listen, you're going to get in Arabia, okay? Lawrence of Arabia, okay? Lawrence of Arabia is a name for you, isn't it? You must have heard of him, right? So Lawrence of Arabia went to the Middle East, right? And he promised the Arabs, actually, you're going to get, as long as you fight with us against the Turks, you're going to get a whole entire Arabia. That was promised to me. I know that. I have direct contact to the Queen. The Queen is actually, you know, I'm dealing with the Queen. They believed him. They believed him, right? Now, in the end, what happened is what we have now. We have 23, 24 Arab states, Arab countries, from Morocco to Iraq, all against each other. The Libyans can't stand the Egyptians. The Lebanese can't stand the Syrians. The Jordanians can't stand the Egyptians, and so on and so on. That's how it goes on, right, in the whole Arab world. Arabs cannot stand each other, although they're Arabs, although they have the same background, okay? The same religion, the same language, most of them at least, okay? So, it was, for sure, yes, I admit it was wrong what they did. And many of them admitted nowadays that it was wrong to revolt against the Ottoman Empire. It was a Muslim ruler, okay? And we're not going to discuss the issue if it was now a legitimate caliphate or not. It was the last caliphate on earth. It was the Ottoman Caliphate. That was it. And they went against it. So as a punishment, I see it as a punishment, actually. It happened what happened now to them. What's happening in the Arab world and in the Muslim world, especially the Arab world, right? We have, in the midst of the Arab world, we have a thorn that's called Israel. Okay? We have the Arabs amongst themselves having issues and trouble and problems. Chaos. Chaos from the beginning to the end. And there we have a country like Turkey, which is one country, just Turkey, okay? Which is has industrialized itself within the last 15 to 20 years in such a way that no other country in the Middle East has done. Okay, it has militarily is actually now number one. You know, the Iraqi army is destroyed. The Egyptian army is actually not that strong anymore. So we have actually, there's just militarily, if you look at that, there's actually just Pakistan and Turkey. Okay, if you look at them, right? So you see an advancement of Turkish society in many ways. I know Turkey 30 years ago. And I know Turkey, I've been visiting Turkey for the last couple of years actually, and I'm very surprised to what I've seen. And an advancement which I haven't seen in any other Muslim country. So, and again, that does not mean that everything is perfect in Turkey. No, I'm not saying that. And everything they did was perfect. No, again, I'm not saying that. But it was a mistake for the Arabs to revolt against the Ottomans. Absolutely, I agree.
There is a whole issue of the Young Turks and this idea of Turkish supremacy, as you mentioned before, the fascist idea that seeped its way into the Ottoman Empire. Well, the Ottomans, not Turks, as you've corrected me. But yes, there's the idea of the Young Turks and the suppression of the Arabs in the Arabian Peninsula. What do you say on that?
Well, the problem is the idea of nationalism entered the heart of the Ottomans, of the Turks actually. You know, suddenly they became Turks indeed. The Young Turks are nothing else but a fascist group, or a group that followed the ideology and idea of Europe that time, which was a time of nationalism. In the 19th century, we had an upheaval and chaos throughout the world, throughout Europe, where you, from 1789, from the French Revolution onwards, you see that people are trying to find themselves in a nation, in nation states. They're trying to create nation states, which would mean a nation state would be nothing else but one country with clear borders where one nation lives, speaking the same language, having the same history, having the same culture, religion, and background. This, until the day of today, doesn't exist. That's a utopia. Now, if you're talking about utopia, by the way, as certain people believe that the caliphate is a utopia, then that's a utopia which is clearly in the mind of the Europeans nowadays. That we have actually 200 plus nation states in the world, okay, which follow this idea and ideal of people living in a country, in a nation, having one language, one culture, one religion. That's nonsense. There is no country like this in the world. There is no homogeneous country in the world like this. Any country is heterogeneous, and you will find different nations, different people, different languages and cultures living in one country state, nation state. So this idea is, was, and will be a utopia. And this is what the Young Turks actually followed. And the Young Turks were nothing else but, Turkish fascist elements who were doing exactly what the Europeans were doing on the other side, basically. The Christian Europeans, you know, the Italians, the Germans, the French, the British, they all were following this kind of nationalism, the idea of, you know, creating borders. So they wanted to create a Turkey based on the idea of the French Revolution, a nation Turkey, a republic of Turkey, where Islam, religion, would be out of the scope of the state. It would not play a role, okay? As in France, the secular republic of France, they actually created a state where the priests had nothing to say anymore. Religion, Christianity became a pariah in society, you know, and any religious person is until the day of today a pariah. Okay, so that this is something that went over to the Muslim state of Turkey now, the Muslim Republic of Turkey. But alhamdulillah, in Turkey, I think there is light at the end of the tunnel. There are people nowadays who actually consider themselves being Muslims rather than being nationalistic Turkish. Okay, and that's a problem that I see happening in the near future. That you see in Turkey already this seeping out of people who believe rather in Islam than in nationalism. They are two different things. You cannot be a nationalist Muslim. You cannot be a Muslim nationalist. You're either a Muslim or you're a nationalist. And that would mean that you would have to negate Islam if you're a nationalist. And this, inshallah, hopefully will not be the case anymore in Turkey. Hopefully Turkey will follow the right direction, inshallah.